Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you might be. My name is Sean, and I'm delighted you are joining us for today's ESBC community webinar. Today I'm joined by Merit, MVP, who will cover the path to an engaged and vibrant community. We love hearing what you guys have to say, so remember to join in on the conversation about today's webinar and more on X. Our handle is at ESBC_community, and our hashtag is hashtag ESBC24. Tweet us, tag us, and tell us what you learned. Don't forget to check out our Learning Hub, which is updated with the latest blogs, ebooks, webinars, and how-to videos. You can access and view the Learning Hub by visiting our website, sharepointeurope.com, and clicking the Content tab at the top. Don't let the learning stop here. Continue to keep up and stay ahead by joining us for our next webinar, Information Protection SharePoint, with Aman Kumar, Microsoft. This webinar will take place tomorrow, Thursday, 17th of October at 11 a.m. 12 p.m. CEST. For more information on this webinar, please check out www.sharepointeurope.com/SharePoint Week. Late bird sale alert for hashtag ESBC24. As part of SharePoint Week, we're offering a €100 discount on top of the current sale price for ESBC24 tickets. Use the code SharePoint Weeks to secure your spot. This offer is for new bookings only. Don't miss this chance to enhance your expertise in Microsoft 365, SharePoint, Azure, Power Platform, Copilot, and Microsoft Teams. Don't miss out. Register your interest today at www.sharepointeurope.com/pricing. We're excited to announce that the call for speakers for EPPC 25 is officially open. This incredible event will take place in Vienna from June the 16th to 19th, 2025, where we'll be looking for Power Platform experts to share their insights with a community of over 2,000 enthusiasts. If you're knowledgeable in Power BI, Copilot, Power Automate, Copilot Studio, Power Pages, or any other Power Platform tools, this is a fantastic opportunity to present and inspire others. Submit your sessions today at sessionize.com/European Power Platform Conference EPBC 1402. After this webinar, we'll have a questions and answer session. Type any questions you might have into the questions box. Questions will be selected and answered at the end of the presentation. This webinar will be recorded and added to the Resource Center, where you'll be notified by email when it's available. And now, I'm going to pass you over to today's webinar presenter, Meredith. Hello, Meredith. Thanks for
Hello,
joining us today.
Sean. Hello, Sean. Thank you for letting me join you this lovely
No worries.
afternoon. So here we go. I may show my screen. Here we are. So I hope you see my screen with the presentation now. Just
I can see your
confirm that.
screen.
Excellent, Sean. Thank you. And yes, my friends, let's talk about how the path to an engaged and vibrant community. And just here's the picture in the back here. It's not exactly a road or a path as we think about a path or stepping stones. It is the big ocean, basically. It will come in waves. You will manage it in waves, perhaps. So let's have a look in what I'm thinking around running an engaged and vibrant community, what it takes to actually build that, because as we know, nothing comes by itself. So let's go on the next slide. Here we are. So first of all, join me, sit around a campfire. That's what I promised you, right? And let's talk about what it means to have a community and be in a community. And doing that, I would like actually you to engage a little bit, my friends, and let me know what you are thinking. What is a community about? So if you can pick up your phone and scan that QR code, or I think you should be able to, I don't know if you can click that link. I'm not quite sure how that works, but at least scan the QR code and give me your idea of what you think community is about, and then we can pick it up again in the end of this session and see what you have responded and what I think about it. So let's see if it can be aligned a little bit. I'll wait for half a minute here, see if people have scanned it. Sometimes takes some time to do that, but and if you don't get the chance, it's also not a big deal, because we can I've shared it in the presentation as well later, so you can find it there. So I guess I can share the presentation with you afterwards, so we can
Perfect.
continue the conversation later. So here we go.
Yeah.
I'll take that away, and let's go again here. So present again, my presentation. So community can be much and can be very different from how we think about it. But before we kind of create our community, let's see, we need to do some activities, and many times maybe you are going to build your own community on your spare time. Maybe you're, as me, engaged in subject matter expertise, or you want to share a community one way or the other with your friends or with your coworkers, or maybe you have been given the task internally in your organization to set up a community. So that could mean different things. It could mean for a process, it can mean for a region of different departments or different locations in your organization, or it can mean a specific expertise. For example, all the engineers or all the people who are working with communication, or for those who are interested in sustainability and the environment. It could be different kinds of communities in your organization. So first of all, you need to know, what do we already have? That's number one. Where are we? What do we have of communities or networks, as the communities are? And also another thing, especially if you are creating this within your organization, I think it's also important to bear in mind what is actually facing us these days. And we've been through a couple of years with a pandemic, and I think quite a lot of us got some awakening when it comes to how to use digital tools, perhaps. Like, for example, a lot more started using Teams and Zoom and other kinds of technology. And I think quite a few of us have learned that we can actually work anywhere, anytime, right? As long as you have an internet connection and a PC or a mobile phone, you can work. It doesn't matter where you are, as long as you are connected somehow. So remote and hybrid work is a shift that we see quite a bit. Some organizations say all employees has to be back in their offices, because then that's the only way we can have control. I'm not sure if that is the best way, but anyway, different companies do different things. And I think also what people have experienced these last years, especially maybe, is a bit of an information overload. There are a lot of different groups, different places. You have different communities, you have different work groups, you have email, you have Teams, you have a lot of that stuff. So where is all this information going, and where should you use and share your information? And then there are maybe some issues when it comes to collaboration and communication. Where should you do all of this? And what is really important? It always have been important, of course, but even more so in the days and times that are facing us, is our well-being at work. Maybe you've heard, maybe your big bosses or even us in the communities, in the Microsoft communities, we say this word of productivity. You've probably heard that quite a bit. And some person the other day said, if I hear that productivity word again, I'm gonna scream, right? Because why do we push all these new tools into people to make them working even harder and more and getting exhausted? Is that the point? Or do we want them to feel good at work, to find new ideas? So it's very important, whatever you do in your organization, if you're going to implement some new technology, please make sure the communication around it is not that we're going to be that productive that we can, take away a few heads, basically, or it should rather be, the communication should be that it is for you, dear employee. I want you to have a better situation at work. I want you to be happy at work. I want you to be able to have time and space to get new ideas and enjoy what you're doing at work. Because if you, my dear employee, have a good time at work, it means our business are doing well. It is that simple, but it's not that hard to do, and that easy to do. So that is kind of some of the main situations that are facing us these days. And then we all know Teams and SharePoint, but there are so many other tools. And what we see that some of these tools, this is just a Microsoft 365 plus other Microsoft tools package, so to speak. And in addition to this, you have other type of tools as well. And then you have all your tools you're using in your private sphere, like for example, Facebook or Twitter X, as it's called, or Thread or Slack or whatever you might. All of these combined, this is adding to the load of where all this information is running and moving around. And Microsoft have set up a way to help you navigate in this jungle of applications and tools. And they have created a program they call the Microsoft MoCA, Modern Collaboration Architecture. And it is very good because it helps to organize and see in a different context what kind of tools should we use in that respective context. And as you see, there are many different ways of how to look at this. For example, if I'm in a team, Teams, Planner, the shared OneNote, for example, Loop, these tools are good for us if we work in a group. That could be a department, that could be a project, that could be a work group, it could be the summer party committee. All of these, when you have a group of people that going to work together on a specific activity, you know why they are there and you know what they're supposed to do, then that constellation of team is a good way. And then you have, for example, me as a person, I have my own productivity tool, so to speak. And also I use Teams. So that is a different thing altogether. So, but I use maybe OneDrive for my personal stuff, and I use SharePoint to share with my colleagues. But then we all back into the Teams constellation. Now, if we talk about community, then you have two major tools for that. You have Teams and you have Viva Engage. And they're quite similar, still they are different. And I'm going to come back to that. So this MoCA diagram helps maybe to organize and decide which of these applications and tools can be useful for your specific context. But of course, if you show this image, and also there are different versions of it, like this one, it's a lot. So you don't show this to your end users, for example. This can be helpful for those who are working with architecture in your organization. We're going to scoot quickly past this again. And if you open your Microsoft 365 platform in the morning, this is what you see if you open all the apps. And then the question is, are you feeling overwhelmed and say, oh my goodness, which one am I going to use for what? Because To Do and Planner and MS Project, they are all task related. So which one should I use in which context? And then I have Teams, I have Viva Engage, I have SharePoint articles. Where should I use for communication? So I might need to think about these things. Or do you feel like you have total control and say, yes, bring all these tools to me, I know how to juggle them? And perhaps it can also be a good idea to make a strategy that works for the whole organization, right? Because what might be working well for me might not be working well for the other one. And if 1/4 of the group is working in collaborating in email, and another 1/4 is collaborating in Teams, and another 1/4 is collaborating in Slack, we are not collaborating. We're not communicating properly, because we need to have some ideas how to do this in our organization. And the ideal situation is, of course, that we have a strategy We know which tools to use for what, and there isn't one answer for that that fits for all. So each organization have to learn these different tools and which one they will use for what. But of course, there are some good practice. And also, one of my friends, Matt Veit, maybe some of you know him, he has created what he called the periodic table of Microsoft 365 and also now added Copilot into this mix. So that is beautiful. And then he has helped, what do I do for file storage? I can use these different tools. Where do I go for activities? These are the tools. And then home base, or is it for a project, or what is the context? So he helped a little bit. It is a very good map, so to speak, to help you look at, okay, in which kind of context can the different tools be used. And now you finally got an overview of how and when you want to use which different tools. And now what? Because what is happening every day is that, for example, Microsoft is bringing new updates all the time, right? So these are also important to have a system or a governance to make sure that you have somebody in your organization to pay attention to the changes, because that can also change how you use the tools. So remember, this is a moving target. So if you're going to implement this technology or are in the process of adopting this technology, make sure that you have a governance and a team who will run this and make sure that it's updated and pay attention, and also help the organization to learn how to use these tools. And when you talk about organization, that can also change. Maybe you are merging with a different company. Maybe you have, or you maybe have part of your organization that goes out of your company and create their own company. Maybe you have different processes. Maybe you need to reinvent yourself and have. So that is also important to keep in mind if you're running adoption or running communities for your organization, that they have to kind of be aligned with everything that is going on in the organization. So on one side, you have technology, one side you have the updates and from Microsoft, for example, and then you have your organizational changes. So all of these are actually affecting how you would run your communities. So yeah, so how is it all connected then? That is sometimes the big question. And let's have a look at these constellations of tools. But before we do that, I want to share my idea around communication and collaboration. And when it comes to that flow, I like to, inspired by Matt Weider, I like to think about them as elements. You have the solid, you have the liquids, and you have the gas, right? Solids, that is that kind of information that doesn't change that often. That could be, for example, what we usually before traditionally had used for our intranet. Like you have your guidelines, you have forums, you have presentations about the company, certain things that doesn't change that much, and maybe your branding image library, for example, certain things that everybody should try to find if they need it, but maybe not every day even. But the content itself doesn't change very much. So that is something we would, for example, now in the Microsoft 365 sphere would put on a SharePoint communication site, which would be the intranet, which we again can then, if you use Viva Connections, we will put it into, merge it into Teams. And I'm going to come back to that a little bit later. And then you have liquid. This is where things are floating. There are some more speed on this content than compared to the solids. So I would, very simplified said, this would happen in Teams. Because there you have the work group, they know what they're doing, they have a process, they're running a project or different kinds of activities that are happening. But it's not like it has to be in a certain way, it can be flexible, but it is moving, something is happening. So I say, okay, that information will happen in in a place where you know who the audience are, you know who all the members who should get this information, and there are specific roles and activities and responsibilities within that confinement, so to speak. And then you have the element of gas that is quickly out there. If you drop a box of gas, if something exists that you can call that, if you drop it, it will go out right away, right? And the same goes for the information. So then you share, that would, for example, Viva Engage would be a natural place to share your company gas, so to speak. So then if you put it out there, everybody knows it. You don't know who all the people are in the different communities, and you don't have to know who all of them are, just that they are. I'm sorry, my glasses are scary. You just know that they are part of your organization, and of course you can share everything there. So that maybe they can help you to look at the information. If you're wondering where should this specific information go, is it solid? Then it should be on our internet type of constellation, or if this is something more of a liquid nature, maybe it should happen in Teams. If it's something that should go out there very quickly, then you have Viva Engage. So very simplified set, but of course it's not the whole answer, of course, but it can maybe help to look at which tools to use for what. And then you have the different constellations of collaboration, which I call teams. Because, you know, when you create a Teams, you also get a SharePoint site, you get a OneNote that is shared, that is a digital notebook that is shared with everyone who was part of that Teams, and then you get a planner. And the OneNote lives in the SharePoint site, right? So this is kind of the collaboration constellation. And then you move into Viva Engage, and they have also the same structure because it's a Microsoft 365 group. You get a SharePoint site, you get a shared OneNote, and you get a shared planner. Planner is for tasks and activities. And to add to that constellation, you also have SharePoint that stands alone. You can have a SharePoint site that is called Team site, which can be connected to Teams later on, or you can have a SharePoint communication site that is standing on its own, which you could use, for example, for a learning portal or your intranet home, for example, or other kinds of portals describing a process or a topic of some sort. So that is a standalone SharePoint. But of course, then you also, let's say I want to create a learning hub. Then I can create a SharePoint communication site where I have all the learning events, I have all the learning material, and get it all into that SharePoint site. But then I have a Viva Engage group, which I want to inform about all this training. So what do I do with the SharePoint behind that community? So that is something you need to decide if you should use that SharePoint site behind that community Viva Engage for your training events, for your material, and anything that you would usually put maybe on a type of intranet page. Maybe you should use that SharePoint site behind Viva Engage, or you want to keep the SharePoint communication site with that content and maybe use the SharePoint site behind the Viva Engage group for people to share their own knowledge. So that is a balance that you need to figure out. And of course, it depends on the size of your organization and the amount of training, etc. you want, or whatever topic you want to add to this constellation. But there are certain things you need to find out and discuss between yourself. Where do you want to put these different things? But the main key is that for collaboration, you use Teams. That is the workroom. The thumb of rule of thumb, sorry. The rule of thumb is that you use Teams for collaboration. You know who everyone are. You know why they're there, what tasks they've got, and it is a smaller group. And they're working together for a specific activity, and everyone in that room should have access to the same content and be able to work on that content. When they're ready to share it, then they can put it into a Viva Engage community of some sort. It could be for all company, If I want to tell what is happening in my department, for example, we have new employees, I'll share it in the all company community. Or we have it is related to a project, so then I will put it into either the expertise related to the project or a project and portfolio community if we have that. So it all depends on what it is. Then you put it on different communities. So for example, a department shouldn't have their own community. That should be in the all company or other natural communities. So I'm happy to discuss with any one of you later on about this, because this is the hardest part to decide where do these different things go. So we've been mapping our country or our different areas, and now we need to, as I going out on the high seas, and we need to find some anchoring. So then based on how to decide between these things, and then you can use Viva Engage and that's perfect for network for knowledge sharing. The whole point about Viva Engage is to crush some silos, throw them out to the big oceans and let them go out there, and let's share this knowledge, this vast ocean we have of knowledge between ourselves across the organization. And you can have different communities. It could be for, like I said, all company. It can be for a specific process, for example, recruitment, if it's an HR process, or it could be for sustainability. It could be for architecture of houses, if you're building houses. So it all depends on, but basically the point behind it is that if I'm interested in sustainability and I'm making some reports about this, I have a place to share it. And somebody else in the organization that I don't even know about can also share their reports or insights into that, or we can ask questions. There are so many different things you can do in Viva Engage. And now these days, a lot of companies are moving from Workplace to Viva Engage. And it's important to remember it's not like a one-for-one switch, because you have Forum in Viva Engage, but in addition, as I showed you, you also have SharePoint, you have OneNote and Planner. It's a bigger beast, basically. So you need to learn a bit about how to organize it. But one recommendation I do have is to, if you choose to build a network or several network in Viva Engage, build it into Teams, because you can have it as a part of your Teams menu, that you have Viva Engage on top on a link on the side, and then you have Teams group, because it's easy to navigate between, okay, these are my network, and now I'm going into my work groups. And then it's easy to switch between them, and easy, especially on the phone. But of course, organizations can be big, they can be small. So maybe a team in Teams can be just as well to be used for a community. And I'm running on my spare time, I'm running a part of running the Norwegian Microsoft 365 community. And this is a print screen from our channels in that community. And we have some regular channels, and then those purple channels, they are for discussing specific topics. So to help differentiate between those different channels. So this is where we have meetups. So when we have a meetup, we share it in the community, and then we use it very, very successfully for community meetups and discussions in between, because we want to also have discussions between the meetups, because you want to learn from each other, right? And that is the whole point about a community. But of course, this is community teams that we borrow from Microsoft. So, and it is across any organization, but we could also have used Viva Engage if we had that. I see the benefit of using Teams is to have these different channels that you can organize different content. But in Viva Engage, you can also do the same, but then you would use, for example, hashtag to differentiate between topics, for example. So they can both have quite similar principle, and they can both be used for network building. So it is, if it's a smaller organization, Teams might be enough. If it's a bigger organization, then it can be quite useful to use Viva Engage for building your community with Viva Engage and have your workroom in Teams. But don't mix it too much. If you want to use those two, don't mix it up. Don't have some communities in Teams and some communities in Viva Engage, because that's going to confuse people a lot. So it is important to build some ground rules that you're going to use and then run with that. So how are we navigating all these seas of communities? Because one thing, as we had a look at now, is this, the constellation of collaboration and communication. And not only that, that is part of what we call the Microsoft 365 platform, which has a lot of tools in addition to this that you can add into your Teams or your Viva Engage, of course, and use. And then on top of this, you have the Viva platform, which is, well, Viva Engage is one of them. And then you also have different modules. You have Viva Learning, you have Viva Connections. So the connection is the solid, as I showed you. You can bring your home SharePoint intranet into Teams with the help of Viva Connections. Very, very smart. And when it comes to community, you want to also have a place to share all that fantastic knowledge that you are producing. And that Viva Learning could be an excellent tool to bring that, all of those internal learning elements into, for example, Teams. So it's all connected, and Teams is kind of the hub for everything, but it will be expand into different tools. So that is Microsoft Viva, has all different tools. Your Viva Engage is, of course, our community. We have a connection to internet. Viva Goals is where you can help concretize your big strategic goals and visions and make them doable or concrete enough so people on different levels can do them. And Amplify is very good for those working with communications, to where to actually, what it says, amplify campaigns, for example, into different communication channels. And Viva Glint and Viva Pulse is basically taking the pulse on situation, and Viva Insight is very smart for looking at how we as an organization are working, and it's not meant as a surveyor tool. It's more of looking at the trends. Are we working a lot of outside normative work hours? Is that because we are doing back-to-back meetings? So maybe I need to learn, and I have to teach my employees to put in focus time to get that, improve that, like we said, the employee well-being, right? So that is super important. And Viva Insight is a good tool for me as an individual to see how have I been doing this last week. Maybe I should put some focus time. Maybe I should put some learning time. And as a manager, it's also an excellent tool to help my employees having a better day. So, and on top of that, you, of course, your co-pilot on top of that, who will pick information from this below and bring it back to you in different contexts. But also remember that co-pilot can only see what you have access to. So I'm going to run a bit faster because I have a lot to say, and I guess the time is running fast. And I will just go quickly through this. But basically, another thing is that you have your internal communities in your organization. And outside work, you might have some local or national communities. So it's also important to look, when you are creating your own communities, how are they compared to your local or national communities? So maybe you can have guest speakers from your local and national communities who come and visit your internal community, for example. And then we have worldwide communities, like we're going on conferences, we're meeting them, and then like we have also the Norwegian Microsoft 365 community is a local and a national community, but we're also involved in the international communities as well. Like we have employee experience community, we have women in teams community, we have the Viva Explorers community. So it's kind of little circles in the water, because some people are engaged in all of this. So that is something to think about when managing your internal communities. And when it comes to your internal communities, you have some, but which one do you want? So it is important to take a bit control, if you had let it run freely, and decide which of these communities should, or network, if you want to call it that, should be managed based on, for example, organizational belonging, and which should be unmanaged. The unmanaged can be both those who are related to a specific expertise, for example, sustainability, so that people can choose to join that community or not. And it's going to also be for social groups in the organization, for example, sports, or who likes horseback riding or hiking or surfing or whatever. So you can have different, but what is important is that you have somebody who are moderating in either of these. That is super important. But you need to put in control and governance on how this should be run, and then explain that to everyone. And refurbish your house. Whether you're creating a Teams or a Viva Engage, it is super important to make sure that you have ownership of these different constellations. And one way of doing that is setting up a Rocky or Racy. I'm not sure how you pronounce it right. And there's a lot of activities within each of them, of course, and you don't have to take all of those 4 letters. But what is important is to make sure that when it comes to, for example, the digital toolbox, who is accountable when it comes to information management or communication, or within information technology, who has accountability when it comes to the digital toolbox? Who is the performing or responsible for what is happening? It is important to bring that mapping up into your organization to make sure that you have people owning these different necessary activities that you need to do. And here's an example of how I set up a Rocky. You take a good old-fashioned Excel sheet, and on the first column, you list all the different activities and maybe divide them into certain activities. And in the top, you have the different units, and then the roles within those units. And then at least if you don't take all the 4 letters, at least make sure you have their responsible and accountable placed for the main activities, because then half the job is done. And I see many times in many organizations, people haven't done this, and you have the pointing game, because then somebody assumed that IT will do this, somebody assumed that HR will do it, and others assume that communication is doing that, or this is in the business, and then nobody's doing it, right? So that's why it's important to make sure that you do that exercise with all involved people around the table, so that you have this responsibility in place. Very important. And here we go. What else do we need to, oops, here we are. And then you have another part which is super important these days is the digital competency. We have mapped our technology, but what about the digital competency around the organization? One part is somebody who's going to run your networks or communities. They need to have a certain degree of competency, number one, to run it, and also to organize it and to refurbish it with the right content and the right roles, and all of these things you need to have in order. And this EU Digital Competence Framework is a very good tool to read through. I recommend. It's a lot of reading maybe, but they have 5 areas that you can use, for example, if you want to run a survey to look at where we are when it comes to stress levels, or how comfortable are I using this and that technology, etc. So then you can use these 5 areas and the description below them to create questions who actually are answering you, where are we within these 5 areas. So that can be a good way to build the right organization about running these communities, because I promise you, if you don't have anyone to run them, guess what's going to happen? They're not going to run. So that is super, super easy. And they need the right competence. You don't give a car and haven't made sure people haven't taken the driving license, right? So it is the same thing that you do here. You give people a powerful tool, give them the skills and knowledge to do it. And in Microsoft Champion, they have champion management platform, because if you look on Caruana Gatimo and her team, they built an excellent program for champions management. Go in and have a look at the Microsoft resources there. There are quite a few really good ones. And I like this very much because this one you can use to define different activities for your champions. And then, for example, if they're running a presentation that is like 3 points or different activities can different points, and then you can measure their activity in the community, for example. So then you can see this is a very, very good tool, and you can define these parameters yourself. And use the gold. You know, you have teams, you have Viva Engage, and many times I see they're so underused because you have channels, you have the forums in Viva Engage, but then you have the SharePoint behind it. You can use, like I use it to create like a event calendar when its next meetup's gonna be. And I use the SharePoint list to have a list of all the different locations we have. We also have an external website, so then I can have links to this external website, for example. And what is super important, whatever you do when running a community, it is building the trust. And as I said in the beginning, it comes in waves. And for example, after when the pandemic hit in the Norwegian Microsoft 365 community, we had already been running some online meetups. So we just kept doing that. I think we had almost like every 14 days in the beginning, and then once a month, and then less and less. And then after the pandemic, I think people were so tired of online meetings. They just didn't want, there were like fewer and fewer and fewer joining our meetups. And then I was like, what, should we continue with this? Is there any point? Because nobody is coming. And that's why I say, if you want to run a community, you need to look at in the big distance, I mean long distance, and remember it comes in waves. Some, you know, life happens to all of us, so it is important to remember that not everybody can join all the time, but just keep staying there, keep making sure you have interesting sessions that people are interested in, and then they will come. So that's why I say be impatient. So hopefully by the end of this session you had, I have 3 treasures I wanted to take with you. And then is for number 1, what is community about? Just let me hold on a second here. Let me see, did anyone respond for that form I shared with you?
There's some people saying, is there any chance of making it anonymous? And then another person said, I don't seem to have the rights to answer the forum questions.
Oh, I thought I had put it on anonymous, because that is like the typical mistake to do, that you don't
No
put it
worries at all.
Oh, sorry. You know what? I had, but for some reason it had turned back to not. Goodness me.
Oh,
All right,
no
let's
worries.
have a look. I try. So please try again. Let's try again and see if you can do it now. In the meantime, are there any other questions? Because I see this blinking
Um,
box here. So are there any
yeah, I'll just
questions in
check now.
the session here?
Yeah, I think there's
Yeah, good
one
answer.
in so far. So, what are some common challenges organizations face when introducing new collaboration tools? How can Viva Engage help overcome these?
Yeah, good question. And yeah, this is probably quite a few challenges, but number 1, like for example, if you had teams from before, some organizations, when they have implemented teams, they had very strict controls, so only certain groups can be created, for example. Others have more free flowing. Everyone can create a team. Everyone can do what they want. So, and then you have those companies with everything in between. So if you, for example, want to implement Viva Engage, then you need to have a step back and have a look at how are our groups organized? How are we actually working in teams? And maybe one of the most important questions might be, are we working in teams or are we working in teams? That is a big difference, because in what we've seen with many companies, that especially now during the pandemic, everybody start working in teams, right? But what they did is just shoveling the whole way of working in email into Teams, which happened then. What happens then is that you use the private chat in Team quite a lot. And then it becomes very messy, because if I start a conversation about one topic and then in between somebody else talk about something else topic, and then a third one respond to my first topic further down, how in the world am I supposed to find that again? It doesn't make a very good way of collaboration, and it creates silos, because we're actually forcing 1990 into 2024, right? So in Teams, it is important that we move conversations. Any conversation that is related to work should happen in channels in Teams. So number one is that to check, how are we actually working in Teams? Do we have purpose-built groups in Teams, or have we copied into old structures? So that is number one thing you have to do, and when you take a step at and have a look, you map your organization, right? And then look at what kind of groups do we have. Okay, we have departments, we have projects, fine, let them continue in Teams. But then we have expertise groups, the networks of either expertise or related to processes of some sort. Should they maybe be in Viva Engage? If you need to inform to a wider audience, bring out the information, build, what you want to do is to build one organization that everybody in the organization is proud of who they are in that organization. Yes, I'm proud to be in Cloudware, for example, right? And you need to build that by understanding what other parts of the organization is doing. So what I went back to the question, because I probably go off on a pivot there, but back to the question, what I see is the biggest challenge is number one, ownership. Who owns this information flow? So that's back to my Rocky matrix, that you need to define who are the ownership and how do you want to communicate these different. And another challenge is that they need to take one step back and look carefully on what kind of groups would you like to have in Teams, and which one should be like open networks. And Viva Engage is supposed to be network for sharing across departments, across the organization, and make people proud, build relations across the organization, and share knowledge. Because in time, if you use Viva Engage Smart, you will build a knowledge bank, which then helps Copilot, if you want to implement Copilot, or AI, if you want to in another way, depends what you want to do, will be able to find it, because my Copilot can only see what I have access to. If you're hiding your conversations in private chats in Teams and in your OneDrive, in your Outlook, or even worse on your desktop, then, or your downloads, for example, then my Copilot will not be able to find it. So that's why important to bring any internal communications should happen in Teams or in Viva Engage, right? So then, but those decisions are the hardest to make, because what is important to remember is also starting working differently in this way can also impact the power structure in your organization. So it is important with communication around it is super important, because as I said initially, you always hear about this productivity this and productivity that, and then people are afraid they're going to lose their jobs, right? So it is important to have a good communication, that this is about you, my dear employee, this is about you having a good time at work, and I want to use these tools, bringing these tools in to help you have more time to do more quality work, or improve the quality of that you have the time to improve the quality, or find more information, to learn more, to invent more. Right. So I hope that answered the questions. Hopefully, please feel free to contact me later on if you want to discuss more. Any other questions along the way?
Yeah. So as communities mature, how can organizations keep engagement levels high and prevent stagnation or disengagement?
Yeah, and then back to, you know, the waves, right? And that is because many times we want to control and we want to make sure people are seeing everything. And back to having that good structure, because it is information overload. Because people are busy in their everyday life. That is important to remember. So why should I go to your community? So you need to sell it. I mean, you need to number one, you need to listen. You know, listen to your employees, listen to the feedback, and make sure you give them a place to give that feedback. So what if people are asking for more information? Bring that, even maybe that's not your interest. Bring what they want to learn more about, and try to find out what is in the wind these days, what is important for your employees, and bring interesting information to them. And even more important is to bring your people forward, right? If you know somebody in the organization that has done something smart, make a small video, you know, share what is happening. And for many, it's a big threshold to share. Oh, I take a video of myself on a mobile phone. Oh, I can't do that. That is, no, I'm not comfortable with that. So that is, you know, you find that threshold to do those things. So that is important to let somebody start. There's always somebody in the organization who are more comfortable. So start with showing them and then help others to do the same. And sometimes write an article about maybe interview somebody in the organization. And then in Viva Engage, what you have is that you have your own personal branding, because like you have on LinkedIn, you have your profile where you have your interest, where you can share your thoughts. So encourage people to share their thoughts and make it safe to share ideas. So that can also be interesting. If you have the premium license, you can also have the leadership corner. So if a manager is somewhere around in the country or somewhere, maybe they have different countries, take a very, you know, informal video made by the phone, share it onto a post in Viva Engage, and share what's happening. And another important key here is to make sure that management lead the way when it comes to these things. If manager doing it, the rest will follow. And also for manager to engage in people's post. You know, if somebody is posting something, manager should make sure that they like it or comment on it, engage, and show the rest of the organization how to engage. So, and you need to be patient. Yeah. But you have to have moderators in each community, minimum 2 moderators, to make sure that somebody's responding. Because the best way to kill a community is that it's quiet. Nobody's answering a question, for example. That is the best way to kill it. So yeah, make sure people are heard and seen. And put forward your local heroes. If you lift people up, they will come back.
Perfect. So just the next
Yeah.
question there is,
Yeah.
how does Viva Engage ensure the security and privacy of sensitive organizational data shared within communities?
Yeah, and goes back. I mean, it is a Micro 365 group. So then you have, so it is within that confine. So whoever has access to that group can see that content. But then also you have another layer you can add on top of that is sensitivity labels, so that you can ensure that the wrong information or information doesn't go into the wrong hands. But this goes back to governance. I mean, what should you have in Teams? What should you have in Viva Engage? If it is sensitive information, for example, contracts or personal information, you shouldn't post that on Viva Engage. You know that you should post in. You should discuss that in Teams or in different places if you have systems for personal, like HR system, for example. So that goes back to governance. Do the right things. If you have clear descriptions of what you use these different rooms for, it is easier for people to know what they're doing there. So, and that's another thing that is one of my pet peeves, is that back to that digital competency, because we have a big lack of digital competency, because we say, oh, the systems and tools should be intuitive so people don't have to think. I say that is really wrong. teach people to use systems, then they don't make those mistakes. Because I can block the main door with bolts and nails and everything, but that doesn't help if somebody else is opening the back door on wide open, right? Because I haven't explained that there is a danger out there in the garden. So that is important. If everybody knows and have increased their skills, it will be much safer for everyone. Yeah, how are we?
Perfect.
Are we getting close to time here? See, yeah, and I got some good input here for what is community about. So I appreciate your learning together, effective collaboration and communication, leveraging power collective, giving, getting engagement, workplace. Lots of, let's see, did I get a word cloud here? Yay, shared. Ah, there you go. Exactly. Oh, this is perfect. Thank you, everyone. So yeah, and let's see what I did. I had a question about it here somewhere. Oops, sorry. There we go. Find the right presentation now. Where was it? There. My treasures. That is what is, yeah. Share knowledge and stay up to date, empower people. That's what I said, learn and have fun. So here we go. So yeah. Compass of foresight. Yeah, no, map your way. That was one of the, and map of new beginning, and sail forward and be patient, and do things. Make sure you get it done. So that is super important. You just do it. And this is me. So you find me in all these different places, communities, yeah, LinkedIn, anywhere. So easy to find. And I see there are some more questions. You will get one more before closing time.
Yeah, we can get in one more.
Yeah.
So what are the initial steps to successfully launch Viva Engage within an organization? Are there
Sorry, I lost the
strategies?
first word. Yeah, I lost the
Oh,
first. Can
sorry.
you start again, please? Yeah.
Yeah. What are the initial steps to successfully launch Viva Engage within an organization? Are there strategies to ensure early adoption?
Yeah, that is number one. Like I said, take one step back. And all depends on where you're coming from. If you are moving from Workplace to Viva Engage, if that is the context, then I would have a mapping of, I don't want to have a look at myself all the time there. Then you have a mapping of your, for example, workplace groups, and then see which of these groups are a lot of activities, a lot of posts, a lot of responses, a lot of members, and etc. And consider, should these groups be moved to Viva Engage? Perhaps some of them would be better to put into teams. Maybe some of them can be merged into bigger communities. So that is, if that is Workplace to Viva Engage context, that is number one what I would do, and then start mapping that out. If it is just to, if you have teams from before and want to expand into Viva Engage, then look at what kind of communities and make that mapping, what kind of expertise. And you don't have to start with like a zillion different communities. It can be enough to have one community, like all company. That could be enough. And another important part, regardless of what you do, I would recommend start with a pilot. Start with a smaller part of the organization to get some experience and learn this beast, basically, to understand the nature of it, get some experience in a smaller group, because what you are learning during that pilot period is, because you will get some aha experiences, and then you will also build some success stories, because there are quite a few low-hanging fruits that is very useful for people. So then, and you might have some in the organization who are already doing these things, so lift them up and get those good success stories, and then use the ad car model. I mean, ProSci, if you know about it, or talk to me about it later. There are certain steps that you need to do, but yeah, important to map, run a pilot, and then plan for building out into organization. Depends on how big your organization are. If it's a smaller one, it can be just one pilot and then to the rest, or if it's a bigger one with many different business units or many different locations, you might want to have a stepwise implementation. but build a
Amazing.
core team of champions who are the continuity holders in this. It's very important. Yeah, are we on time?
Yeah.
Or
So on behalf of the ESPC community, we'd like to extend a big thank you to you again, Merit, for taking time out to carry this webinar. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Sean. It was a pleasure being here, and thank you to all the attendees for engaging. And I'm so sorry that form.
No worries at all.
But thank you. You fixed
It
it,
still
so
worked
that
out in
was
the end.
yeah.
Yeah. So that's the end of today's webinar. You'll find this webinar and more at sharepointeurope.com/resource center. Thanks again for y'all for joining us today, and I hope you join us again soon. Take care.
Bye bye.